Hello there and welcome to my channel. My name is Marie. Today we are just going to flip through this beautiful magazine here. It is Vanity Fair from June 1995. And as you can see here on the front page, we have beautiful Courtney Love, which at the time was a recent widow of Kurt Cobain from Nirvana. If you are my age or older, you might remember these iconic celebrities of this time. So this magazine contains some really interesting articles. Usually Vanity Fair has many interesting and surprising and mind-blowing. The Long Strange Trip of Rock Icon Courtney Love by Kevin Simmons. Plus Maurice Sachi's Revenge, Rupert Pennant Reyes, Woman Scorned, John Keegan's War, OJ's Vanished Lady, and Rita Hayworth and Ali Khan's Legendary Romance. Wow, so many really interesting articles, and they are quite long. I skimmed through them already. So I know that we cannot go through them all in one day, but maybe we can take this magazine over several videos. So I will have to pick one or two of these articles. We also have beautiful ads to go through from this iconic time, 31 years ago. Yeah, it's a long time ago. So yes, let's start. And this time I'm just going to sit here in front of you and read. Yeah, so it's easier for me to see. I am nearsighted, unfortunately, so it is easier for me to read the articles this way. Yes, a car ad here, a BMW on the front page, first page, and Estee Lauder double color everlasting lipstick. A beautiful lipstick. And Vanity Fair features. And here are all the very interesting articles. There's also The Miller's Tale, these three lovely princesses or aristocratic women, as Alexandra, Marie Chantal, and Pia unite the von Fürstenbergs and the Greek royal family with the Gettys on their duty-free tycoon father's list of in-laws. David Seidner and Laura Jacobs introduced the fabulous Miller girls. So back then, Marie Chantal, as you can see here, yeah, she's the first one here. She was back then not yet a princess, but she became a princess. She married Prince Paulus, which is the son of the Danish princess Anne-Marie, which is Queen Margrethe's little sister. The youngest of her sisters, she married a Greek king and had Prince Paulus, which married Marie Chantal here. So I think that's very relevant article to go over. Yes, and classic Ralph Lauren ad. More Ralph Lauren ads. Beautiful blonde people here. They look very Scandinavian. She has brown eyes though. Very beautiful people. Yes. And there's a Rolex gold Rolex watch. Yeah, it is a magazine for the rich and famous. At least you get into the world of the rich and famous, and celebrities and aristocrats. Royalty is what Vanity Fair is all about. So that's that. Always interesting. And Audi Ursprung Dutch Technique. Audi car ad. Yes. And I think we will skim over many of these ads here because I think the articles are really the most interesting part of these Vanity Fair magazines. So I will show you these beautiful bags, though they are very chic little bags from Luxury Leather. Okay, it's not clear what the brand is. Diamonds. Beautiful diamonds. Magnificent sapphire and diamond necklace and earrings. Cartier watches. Yes. And perfume ad. Youp for men. I didn't know that one. And more diamonds and watches. Cerruti. I remember that one. That perfume. Cerruti. 1881 Parfum. Yes. Safari, the men's fragrance by Ralph Lauren. Safari. And look at that little baby cup there. Very cute. Yeah. Woman Scorned, when Mary Ellen Sinon, Rupert Pennant Ria's spurned mistress went public with saucy, intimate details of their affair, it cost him his job as Deputy Governor of the Bank of England. Ugly Revenge or Sweet Justice by Sarah Luell. This is a scandal article. And of course I cannot go through all of them, but we can just read some of it. Here's the woman here, the scorned woman, and the man here, Rupert Pennant here. Yes. The perils of being hard at work. Rupert Pennant Rhee, top left, walking near his home in West London just after he was forced to resign as Deputy Governor of the State Bank of England in 1994. Pennant Rhee has sent a formal letter to his 44-year-old Irish-American mistress, Mary Ellen Sinan, above, reiterating the end of their relationship. She finally decided not to take it lying down. And on March 19th, in 1995, she went public with their 3-year affair in the British tabloid The Sunday Mirror. And here's the tabloid. Yeah. And there's a very, very detailed, interesting article about the whole affair. And on the other side, Christian Dior had the Dune perfume. The moment, the memory, the dream. Yeah. And so many articles about this scandal. Helen Pennant Rhee did what wronged British wives seem to do regularly. She served tea to the scruffy pack of reporters camped out at the front door of her home. Well, that was nice of her. Yeah. Keep the home fires burning on the doorstep of her home. Helen Pennant Rhee gave a statement supporting her husband after he resigned from the bank. In said, Helen and her twin sister Catherine at their Sussex University graduation in 1966. Yes, bedtime reading. After the scandal broke, the British tabloids competed with one another to reveal the juiciest aspects of the affair. Pennant Rhee's erotic fantasies during bank meetings, how Mary Ellen had been smuggled past bank guards, how the couple had sex on bank premises on the floor of what appeared to be the dressing room of Pennant Rhee's boss, Bank Governor Eddie George. Yeah. I spent quite a lot of my time at meetings thinking of you with no knickers. The newspapers quoted Pennant Rhee as writing. Ooh. Yeah, juicy. But, yeah, it must be that I think of the poor wife there, who both had to be hurt and also publicly humiliated in a way, maybe completely unaware and in shock, and everything public also. It must be such a, it's a very long article. After details of the affair continued to pile up in the press, Pennant Rhee was forced to issue a statement of resignation from his office on March 21st, 1995. To paraphrase Disraeli, revenge is the deepest and most satisfying of passions, concluded Mary Ellen. Okay, so moving on. Again, diamonds, jewelry, and watches. Expensive stuff. And Mr. Lonely Hearts, the timeless distillations of Edward Hopper are on show this month at the Whitney by William Kennedy. And again, Ray Tiffany watch. Beautiful watches. Yeah, so beautiful. And there is another interesting article here. The name of the father, Malcolm X's daughter, Kubaila Shabazz, saw her father gunned down and came to believe that the black Muslim leader Louis Farrakhan was behind the assassination. Now Shabazz herself has been charged with plotting the murder of Farrakhan by M.A. Farber. That also looks like a very, very interesting and very surprising story. I've never heard of this before. Maybe you Americans, you know more about this affair in detail. I of course know of Malcolm X, big fan, but yeah, I don't know about the details of this incident, what happened. Worthy of death, Louis Farrakhan, above far right, wrote those words of Malcolm X left after the letter split from the Nation of Islam. Here they are in friendlier times at a rally in New York in 1963, because Farrakhan had been so harsh in his denunciations. Many believe he was complicit in Malcolm's 1965 assassination. Instead, accompanied by her mother Betty Shabazz, Malcolm's 34-year-old daughter, Kibaila, arrives at St. Paul, Minnesota on March 23, 1995 to face federal charges of plotting bloody revenge for her father's murder. I do think that eventually Louis Farrakhan is going to in a very slick way have her Betty Shabazz killed. Okay, or it's either him or my mother. Kibaila Shabazz to Michael Fitzpatrick, July 27, 1994, government transcript of a recorded telephone conversation. And here's the telephone call, what was said. And yes, we can go in detail with this if you would like in another video, but I think we will just skim over some of the parts of the headlines, and we can always go in depth. It's a very long article, so many long articles. 1995 was a year of many big events and many big things happening in the world, especially in the US. That's a very long article. I'm sure it's really interesting, and there are pictures and statements and old writings of all sorts. After reporting Shabazz's plan, Fitzpatrick was promised $45,000 by the FBI to continue his cooperation. An open secret. Louis Farrakhan is pictured speaking in 1995 at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. When asked whether Farrakhan was involved in Malcolm's murder, Betty Shabazz replied, "Of course, yes. Everybody talked about it." The trunk of Fitzpatrick's Buick, police reported, was a small arsenal, tear gas, 8 clubs, bayonets, hunting knife, and metal pipe. Well, that is concerning. Yeah. Fitzpatrick, steering Kabila towards the hidden FBI camera, does most of the talking as usual. Mother Courage. Betty Shabazz speaking to the press in St. Paul, Minnesota, after her daughter's arraignment on January 18, 1995, is said to oppose any admission of guilt by Kabila. She is accompanied by defense lawyer Mercy Sutton Left and William Kunstler. And here is Betty Shabazz, Malcolm X's wife. Yes. Quite big court cases at this time. Of course, we also know of the big OJ Simpson case, which is, there's also an article about here in this magazine. Kabila asked FBI agent Lund how much trouble she was in. Probably some, he said. 2 days later, he advised her to get a lawyer. And here is an article about the OJ Simpson case. The lady vanishes. Yes. The spotlight in the OJ trials flickers from Kato Kalin to Dennis Fung to the jurors, but the victims are disappearing. By Dominic Dunn. When he gets crazed, I get scared. He gets a very animalistic look in him. All his veins pop out. His eyes are black, just black. I mean cold, like an animal. Nicole Simpson to police, who responded to her 911 call after OJ Simpson kicked in her door. It is a fact of life that victims get lost in murder trials as the focus of attention shifts to the defendant in the courtroom. No issue, not even the holes made by a stapler in a police department form, is too insignificant to tie up a trial and distract jurors from what they are there to hear. In the trial of Lyle and Eric Menendez, days at a time would go by without a mention of the brutally slain victims, Kitty and Jose Menendez, while the defense concentrated on the tacky private life of the psychologist to whom the brothers had confessed their guilt, as if discrediting him lessened the seriousness of the killings the defendants were on trial for. The victims are, after all, dead, and the shock of their deaths are long since been absorbed, except by their families and close friends. It is also a fact that the defendant becomes a sympathetic figure in many people's eyes. We are experiencing that increasingly in Department 103 of the criminal courts, building in Los Angeles, the charismatic star OJ Simpson dominates the proceedings from the moment he makes his entrance into the courtroom. Each morning, totally aware of the effect his presence makes. His cadre of lawyers, as well as one of the deputies assigned to guard him, are deferential to him. His every reaction, from his frequent exasperation to his occasional laughter, captivates the attention of the room. When photographs of the slashed victims, Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman, lying in grotesque positions in gallons of blood, are flashed on the large screen in the courtroom, observers no longer recoil in horror. We have become used to them. Kato Kalin, to whom Simpson gave a free room in the guest quarters of his Brentwood estate, amused the defendant when he was on the stand. Simpson's obvious pleasure at Kalin's antics enraged the family of Ron Goldman, who were sitting next to me. Their anger was so intense that I thought I could feel the heat from it. They stared at Simpson as if willing him to turn and look in their direction so that he could see their hatred. But OJ knows where not to look in the courtroom. He knows where the friendly faces are. The deputy mentioned above, who sometimes jokes with Simpson, berated a cousin of Goldman's. One day, when he giggled at an audible stomach growl coming from Patty Goldman, Ron's stepmother, "If you do that one more time, you'll have to leave the courtroom," he told the terrified young woman. You can't convict a $10 million Hollywood screenwriter. Ivan Moffat at a dinner party at Miss Jerry Wald's. Well, so that's that was just the first chapter of this article, and it's quite a long one as well. So yeah, let's move on to the next. It's very interesting. I would love to go in more depth with this. We can just take the headlines here. Nicole felt that OJ's abusiveness to women had something to do with his father being gay. Well, okay, that doesn't make any sense really, but Kato never looked me in the eye. I told Cora, this guy knows something. He won't look at me. This article was so long. Vanities. Here are some ads. Carlsberg, that's a Danish beer brand here. Yeah. We are represented in many things around the world. Vanities. Sophie Marcher, French starlet. Here. Beautiful. Yes. And British Airways. The British Airways. Sweet smell of success. Sweet, like Swedish smell of Dolph Lundgren rises again. Okay, Dolph Lundgren, Swedish. Is he an actor? karate. What? Dolph Lundgren. What does he do? I don't remember. I know the name. What is he? Maybe you can help me out. I'll get back to that article. And that was what a cell phone. That's Nokia 232. An old cell phone. Probably one of the first cell phones, mainstream cell phones in 1995. It looks like the one that I had in around 2000. 3210, I think it was. Nokia 3210, which many people had. Oscar Bravo, something from, that's some photos from an Oscar party with lots of celebrities in their youth and prime. Yes, so many well-known: Stevie Wonder, Byron Allen, and Jane Fonda, Sally Field, Michael Douglas, and Sharon Stone, and a very, very young Leonardo DiCaprio there. Very, very young. I think that was probably before Titanic. Yeah, it was. But he was a child actor also. I remember him from a TV show where he was a child actor. I don't remember which TV show it was. Just remember him. And when was this? Vanities. Gail Sheehy. Aqua Decorum, Eau de Toilette. There are still oceans to discover. Discover the fragrance of the America's Cup. Eau de Toilette. Yes. Night table reading. Books. Yeah. Absolute vodka. Still famous vodka here. Absolute magnetism. Yeah, that's a funny ad here because it's like the article, all the words are dissolved. I guess that's how it looks after drinking this bottle. And here is the article about the love child. Here's a beautiful, beautiful artistic photograph. Very, very beautiful. Of Courtney Love and her child from her marriage with Kurt Cobain. Yeah. Photographed by Herb Ritz. Styled by Kate Harrington. Very beautiful. Grunge queen Courtney Love. This was the time of the grunge decade. Grunge era, yeah, that's what you would call it. Grunge queen Courtney Love is on her way to becoming the most powerful female rock icon in the country, but she thinks everybody wants her dead. As Love searches for a new home, Love, that's her name, some place with witches and vampires, Kevin Sessoms talks to the Great White Widow about sex, drugs, and her daughter, Frances Bean, and the suicide of her husband, Kurt Cobain. Somebody in Japan offered me a grotesque thing, says Courtney Love, the grunge diva who fronts not only the alternative rock band Hole, but also as the widow of Nirvana's Kurt Cobain, the vacation. They offered me $4 million for this house because of Kurt dying here. Of course, I was like, go F-U-C-K yourself. They were never even going to live here. They just wanted it. As what? As a museum? Kurt wanted me to stay, or he would not have done it in the greenhouse. She continues, alluding to the day Cobain, having escaped from his last visit to a drug rehabilitation center, took a gun and put it to his weary head and pulled the trigger. A guard unlocks the gate to the estate, which is high on a hill above Lake Washington in Seattle, near the house of Howard Schultz, the chairman and CEO of the Starbucks coffee bar chain. The first thing I see at the end of the drive is that infamous greenhouse. Now a shrine filled with orchids and daphnes and gardenias above the garage. Parked below it, like a kind of auto couple, are Love's two Volvos, a sedan and a station wagon. The bumper sticker on the former reads, I'm a homemaker and proud of it. As I enter the quarry stone mansion, which she says once belonged to the Blaine family, who were among the founders of this most beautiful of northwestern American cities, the delighted squeals of Frances Bean Cobain. The 2.5-year-old progeny of Kurt and Courtney serve as a welcoming herald. The bright-faced youngster is being chased around the downstairs room by Love's bearded assistant. I'm going to get you, he teases her. To the left of the manor's grand staircase is a rather formal dining room, lorded over by a dark and bedeviling Robert Hawkins painting titled The Drug Dealer's Horse. To the right is a parlor containing 3 overstuffed sofas. A giant framed needlepoint angel is on one wall. On another hangs a gift to Cobain from the writer William Burroughs, a sketch primitively rendered by the grizzled author's apparently shaky hand of a slit-eyed, slightly evil alien-looking creature, an E.T. with the DTs. What appear to be bullet holes riddle the portrait. The inscription from Burroughs reads, "The priest they called him." Well, I will maybe get in more to depth with this article. It's also very long. So many long articles in here that we can definitely use many hours together with this magazine in the future. I think she's been through hell and back as a teenage fan, and she survived, yes. And here's a very beautiful picture, again, of Courtney in a bathtub. It seems full of rose petals. Yeah. Saachi's Revenge. A new article here. Maurice and Charles Saachi sold Margaret Thatcher to Britain and the Concorde to the world. By the mid-1980s, their advertising company was the biggest on the planet. Then Charles was eased out, and Maurice was ousted. in a boardroom coupe. Via Meta, Rocco traces the story behind the brothers' tempestuous departure, including a $38 million revelation, a battle for revenge, and the birth of the new Saatchi agency. So I will skip this article for now. It's also a very long article. And another article. Mizrahi Unsit. When filmmaker Douglas Keefe made a documentary about his friend Isaac Mizrahi, the designer, their relationship hit the rocks. But Keefe's funny, stylish movie was a big hit at the Sundance Film Festival. In the hypercritical fashion world, and with Miramax, which will release it this fall, Kathy Horin gets to take on the final cut. So I just read the introductions to these articles, and then we can always go in depth with them at another time. End of Exile. Robert Wilson, the researcher, American creator, director of minimalist masterpieces such as Einstein on the Beach, is celebrated in Paris and Berlin with devoted patrons including Pierre Berge and Saul Schlumberger. Bob Colacello profiles the exile from Waco, Texas, as Wilson returns home with a new production at a hamlet in which he talks on all the roles. And it's also a really long article. Boys, and the next article, Boys of Broadway. Treating the boards. These 7 young talents are making their Broadway debuts this season. And now here is the article about the sisters, the Miller Tales, the Miller sisters. Oh, such a beautiful, beautiful Rococo style pictures of these aristocratic women which married princes, all of them, I think. Let's see. Sisters act opposite the well-born Miller sisters, clockwise from left, Pia and Alex, and Marie Chantal. 26-year-old Marie Chantal Miller, this page, the sister in charge of organizing a family fund that will promote environmental awareness, will walk down the aisle with Crown Prince Paulus, the son of Greece's King Constantine, in the Greek Orthodox Cathedral of Saint Sophia. And here's the beautiful Marie Chantal. And I remember watching this on TV because it was TV transmitted here in Denmark, because it was Anne-Marie, Danish Princess Anne-Marie's son, Paulus, who was getting married. And it was such a real-life princess and prince wedding, so it was very dreamy, and she was the most beautiful, beautiful princess, real-life princess I had ever seen. And it was so So beautiful. And of course, Prince Paulus was also extremely handsome prince, like in the fairy tales, and she was, as you can see, the most beautiful fairy tale princess here. So it was like a real life fairy tale reading, which of course made me very dreamy as a little girl, and I loved to watch that. The Miller's Tale. The daughter of duty-free King Robert Miller are a fairy tale trio. One is already wed to American royalty, and the other two are about to marry princes. Laura Jacobs talks to the Cushing sisters of the next millennium, all dressed in rococo princess dresses. So beautiful, beautiful women, young women. And I liked that they have really, these pictures are just gorgeous. In real silky cotton dresses. Oh, and here's how the article starts. Once upon a time, there were 3 sisters who lived in a house on a hill in Hong Kong. Their American-born father, Robert W. Miller, was known to all as the duty-free king, famous for his airport imperiums. Their mother, Chantal, born in Ecuador, was said to be the last Incan princess. The eldest daughter, Pia, played with pretty dolls. The middle girl, Marie Chantal, chose G.I. Joes. The youngest, the pet, Alexandra, collected Barbies. They went to an English school, then off to Swiss boarding school, and then each in her turn to America for a degree in art history. Meanwhile, doing things girls who are not the daughters of billionaires do, going out with friends and eligible men, taking dance class, catching movies, watching Melrose Place. This is a Gen X fairy tale, but it comes complete with princes, for soon 2 of the Miller sisters will marry into aristocracy. On July 1st, 26-year-old Marie Chantal exchanges vows with Crown Prince Paulus, the eldest son of Greece's king Constantine, in front of thousands guests in the Greek Orthodox Cathedral of St. Sophia in London. In preparation for the ceremony, Marie Chantal will not only convert from Catholicism, but privately rehearse. I have to walk around the altar 3 times in a huge train, she exclaims. They're giving me a mock train to practice with. A Train and Gown by Valentino. 3 months later, in New York, 22-year-old Alex will marry childhood sweetheart Alexander von Furstenberg, a son of Prince Egon and designer Diane von Furstenberg. When someone says Alex says, beaming. We both turn round, and while the Miller parents own homes in New York, Paris, London, Hong Kong, and Gstaad, plan post-honeymoon. See the 2 Alexes settling down in LA, and Marie Chantal and Paulus in Manhattan, where Pia, 28, since 1992, the wife of Christopher Getty, grandson of J.P., and as close as you come to American royalty. already lives. Asked what advice she has for her affianced sibling, Pia says, "None. I think they've made the right choices." This is a Gen X fairy tale, complete with princess. Here's the beautiful young sister. Alexandra Miller, 22. So this is the youngest sister. Engaged to Alexandra von Fürstenberg, son of Prince Egon and von Fürstenberg and designer Diane von Fürstenberg. When someone says Alex, we both turn around, she says. The eldest sister, Pia Getty, opposite, has been married for 2.5 years to Christopher Getty. This is the eldest sister. They all look so much alike. So beautiful. Oh, so beautiful. Okay, so that was a very short article. Just 2 pages. Miami refab, although they, so, okay. So there's Miami refurb. Okay, we have to move on. Oh, here it is. The article that I also really want to read, The Goddess and the Playboy. The famous love story between Ali Khan, legendary playboy, son of the Aga Khan, prowled the Riviera in relentless pursuit of speed, sport, and women. In 1948, he set his sights on Hollywood's love goddess Rita Hayworth, who was being pursued by Ari Onassis and the Shah of Iran after her marriage to Orson Welles. Disintegrated. In an excerpt from Throne of Gold, Anne Edwards tells the tale of Rita and Alice's tumultuous union. And here is beautiful Rita Hayworth. And The Bald and the Beautiful. Ali Khan at the horse races in 1950 became obsessed with Rita Hayworth in 1948 when she screened her movie Gilda at his chateau on the Riviera. Soon thereafter, she visited Monte Carlo, and hostess Elsa Maxwell arranged for the two to meet at a party. Opposite, in a still from Gilda, Rita performs her famous striptease to the blame of Mammy. Oh, yes. Rita Hayworth, such an icon, beautiful icon. Yes, and the famous playboy here at horse race. Intense sunlight made a blaze of the magnificent spectacle of His Highness Aga Khan III's Golden Jubilee procession, a platform with a divan upholstered in spun gold. The Aga Khan's elder son and their apparent Ali was 25 at the time of the Golden Jubilee. Ali's mother, the second of the Aga Khan's 4 wives, was a beautiful dark-eyed Italian ballerina whom the Aga Khan had relentlessly courted after seeing her on stage in Giselle at the Monte Carlo Opera House in 1907. Ali's childhood was lonely. His mother pursued a career as a sculptor by day and gave lavish parties at night, while his father shuttled among the capitals of the world, seeing to the concerns of his followers. As a young man, Ali was tremendously good-looking, quite exotic, with his mixed Italian and Oriental heritage. He seemed solemnly determined to prove that he could do everything alone, else could do, only faster. He was always at the top of the hunt when he rode to the hounds. He raced his horses with reckless abandon. He drove in famous Grand Prix races in France, Monaco, and Italy. To Ali, it was all fabulously fun, which is how he described a 10,000-mile round-trip flight, the longest civil flight ever out of India, from Bombay to Singapore in 1932. Flying over treacherous jungles in a single-engine plane with no radio. He had a lot of experience at big game hunting, having bagged 3 lions, 7 tigers, and some 20 leopards, and panthers while on foot, not from the safety of the elevated platform called a machon. Like his father, Ali was never attracted to Oriental women. When he was 23, he fell deeply in love. She was a tall, slim English beauty, 3 years his senior, fair and slightly hunky, and she was married. Her name was Miss Lowell Guinness, nee Joan Barbara Yardbuller, daughter of Lord. Yeah, long. And their wedding was the society highlight of 1927. But of course, he was very much a playboy. The trouble with Ali, an intimate of his ventured reveals, is that he is grossly oversexed. Yes, and here he is with his former, in this picture with his former wife, I think. Yes. The thrill of the chase. Ali Khan and his father, the Aga Khan, were among the most important horse breeders and racers in the world. Opposite Ali rides Albanese at the Le Touquet in 1955. The only thing Ali pursued more enthusiastically than horses was beautiful women. Not tarts, but decent, respectable women. Observed a friend. This page, he dances with Kim Novak in Cannes in 1956. Instead, Ali dines with a countess at Tolico of Rome at a Monte Carlo gala in 1953. Sitting at right is Elsa Maxwell. Oh, okay, so that was not his wife there. That was another respectable woman. Oh, and there she is again. Such a beautiful, beautiful Rita Hayworth. I never saw the prince as a sex maniac. It was Miss Hayworth who was insatiable. Oh, yeah, it's a redhead. Redheads, yeah. Yet, Ali's marriage did nothing to dampen his interest in speed, sports, bloodstock, and women. During World War II, he served with British intelligence forces in the Middle East. Immediate superior officer Colonel A.D. Wintle remembers being told, "The only risk I ran in having him on my team was that he was irresistible to women. Could not leave them alone, and the Germans knew it. I once asked him, why he chose to pose as the great lover when he could have been remembered for so many other things. So I paid them out by winning all their desirable women. In fact, Ali was always convinced that Joan's family and English friends held him in low esteem because of his mixed racial background. After the war, Ali was often seen without his wife in Monte Carlo and in the chic clubs and the casinos on the Riviera. The Riviera chronicler Stanley Jackson wrote, Ali Can walked into the restaurant of the Cannes Casino. He was smaller than I expected he was, 5 feet 6 inches tall. Quite roly-poly, weighing about 160 pounds, and going bald. And this was in 1947. He was soon chatting merrily about Maxine Elliott's luxurious villa, the Chateau de Horizon, which he had bought for £35,000. I gathered that Ali would preserve the water chute down which guests could slide straight into the sea. He did, if they preferred that to the huge swimming pool. But he had no intention of switching on her imitation moon for dark nights. Suddenly he jumped to his feet and shot off to greet a very pretty brunette. They were soon dancing cheek to cheek, locking in trance-like mutual admiration. Jackson continued, it was said that he dipped his fingertips in rose water to prolong his lovemaking, and boasted cynically that he never shot until he saw the whites of their eyes. One of Ali's lovers claimed that he was able to hold an erection for hours. The ancient Arabic art of imsak was said to be responsible for Ali's extraordinary sexual prowess. As a young man, he had gone, as the Aga Khan had before him, to a doctor in Cairo with whom he had spent 6 weeks studying the control of his muscles so that he did not reach a climax. He liked the effect it had on women. One friend claimed he liked to get them out of control while he remained in control, the master of the situation. Ali's romantic adventures brought him international fame, the press stepping lively to keep up with the most recent. One equestrian of his romantic merry-go-round, attractive women had a startling effect on Ali. A beautiful young society matron sitting across from him at a dinner at this time recalled that suddenly he began staring at me very intensely, not moving his eyes. Then his nostrils began to flare. I swear they did, just like Rudolph Valentino's in the silent movies. I was at a complete loss. All through dinner, every time I raised my eyes, he was staring at me and flaring his nostrils. The trouble with Ali, an intimate of his ventured, is that he is grossly oversexed. If he would stop chasing women, he probably would be all right, but the man must have 3 or 4 of them at a time. He doesn't chase tarts. He runs after lots of decent, respectable women. And he has made many enemies doing it. One of Ali's favorite diversions when not pursuing women, or one of his demanding sporting activities, was viewing movies. He had added a projector at Chateau de l'Horizon in the early days of the summer of 1948. The most popular film in Europe was Gilda, starring Rita Hayworth, a role that earned her the name of Hollywood's love goddess. Ali had the film run several times, fascinated by Rita as she sang. Her voice was dubbed by the singer Anita Ellis, but he learned that only later. Put the blame on Mammy, oozing sex in a form-fitting gown while dancing and peeling off a pair of elbow-length black gloves. Ali had just ended a short affair with Pamela Churchill, the red-haired, free-spirited former daughter-in-law of Winston Churchill, a particular hero of his. In fact, one of the largest of the 10 bedrooms at the chateau was called the Winston Churchill Room. From the days when he had been the former owner's guest, Pamela departed by sea with one of Ali's closest friends, the Fiat Herr Gianni Agnelli. Ali did not seem to be disturbed by this, especially when he learned that Rita was on the Riviera. He had voiced his desire to meet Rita to Elsa Maxwell, gossip columnist, friend and enemy of the rich and famous, who was also grossly overweight, celibate, she said, and renowned for her parties, always paid by other people. Lady Luck was in corner. Rita Hayworth was arriving in Europe at any moment, and it so happened that Elsa was helping to arrange a party on July 3rd at the elegant Palm Beach Casino. She promised Ali Khan make sure he was invited and seated next to Rita. The love goddess was married to the actor-director Orson Welles, but the marriage had fallen apart, and Welles was living with an Italian woman. Not that Rita needed to be lonely, she was being wooed, and at the time by Aristotle Onassis and the Shah of Iran, but chose to ignore telephone calls, flowers, and gifts from both of these powerful men. The failure of her marriage had been an enormous disappointment, and she greatly admired Wells, and they had a small daughter, Rebecca. She was in a depressed state and considering returning to the States sooner than she had planned. Maxwell urged her to attend to the party, where Ali Khan was also to be a guest. "I have nothing to wear," Rita lamely protested. Not a woman to give up easily, Maxwell told her to go and buy a new dress in the boutique of the Hotel du Cap, where Rita was staying. "Come in late, make an entrance," she prodded. It was nearly midnight when supper was to be served. Everyone had arrived an hour or so earlier. The room was glittering, the doors thrown open to the soft breezes of the Mediterranean night. Rita stood on a landing, a winding staircase before her, dressed in a stark white Grecian gown that hugged her sun-bronzed, shapely body. Her red hair was loose about her bare shoulders, and around her neck was a shimmering emerald and diamond necklace. She looked spectacular, and heads turned towards her as she started to descend. Slowly and majestically, head up, never looked at her feet. Allie was at her side when she reached the bottom step, and never more than an arm's length from her for the rest of the evening. He was a smooth and expert dancer. He was equally adept at seduction. At about 3, they left the party and drove up to where the precipitous Grand Corniche overlooks the Mediterranean coastline. Miles below, a ribbon of lights charting its path. Rita's secretary and traveling companion, Shifra Haran, said the prince was immediately smitten by Miss Hayworth. Definitely. But Miss Hayworth definitely was not. If not smitten, she was certainly charmed, because she went back to the Chateau de la Raison with him and did not return to her hotel until later that morning. Allie was to have flown that day in his private plane, Avenger, to Ireland, where at 2, one of his newest horses was to race. But he cancelled this trip. Rita had agreed to return to his white seaside villa in the afternoon. When she arrived 3 hours later for their appointment, she was dressed in white shorts, her hair loose and her face free of makeup. Allie was stunned by her natural beauty. They danced cheek to cheek in the grand ballroom of the spectacular house. Just the two of them. A record player spinning Gershwin, Porter, and Berlin. When he left for Ireland the next morning, Rita promised she would remain in the south of France until his scheduled return. 5 days later, while he cheered to victory, Rita was deluged daily with huge bouquets of red roses. The day before his return, a gypsy woman who spoke Italian and was accompanied by a translator appeared at Rita's hotel, insisting on seeing her. Intrigued, Rita asked her up to her suite. The woman predicted that she was about to embark on the greatest romance of her life. He was someone she already knew. Rita, she insisted, must relent and give in to him totally. Only if she did that would she find happiness at long last. Allie's hand in his prediction seems likely, but Rita was strangely convinced by the fortune-teller's words. She extended her trip and all but moved into Le Horizon for the 10 days before she had to return to Hollywood, where she was committed to start a new film. The impressive white, green-shuttered three-story chateau with its dozens of sun-filled rooms painted by the great impressionists whom Alley collected, the magnificent sea views from the immense terrace that almost encircled the gracefully sprawling building, the Olympic-sized swimming pool, the safe of his bedroom that contained thousands of dollars in many different currencies, so that he could fly off on a whim in adventure to any place he wished, and the quality of pampering she received from Alex's exotic Indian staff, all contrived to fuel her romantic nature. Allie's great charm completed the seduction. Rita believed herself to be deeply in love with him. Hollywood's love goddess she may well have become, but Rita Hayworth's roots were rough and humble. Born Margarita Cancino in Brooklyn, New York, she was the daughter of Eduardo Cancino, a professional Spanish dancer who took her out of school at the age of 12 to dance as his partner. Made up to look older, in Tijuana, across the border from Southern California, and who, according to her own tortured confession, had abused her sexually since she was 10. They were known as the dancing casinos, and Eduardo passed her off as his wife in the raucous offshore gambling ships and Mexican gin mills and casinos in which they performed. Her mother, the exotically named Volga Hayworth, was an American showgirl who became an alcoholic, as did Cancino later in his life, and seemed to have more than she could handle with Rita's two younger brothers. Horrible. At 17, shapely and dark-eyed, raven-haired beauty Rita was signed by 20th Century Fox, only to be dropped to her father's great disappointment. A few months later, he turned to a promoter named Edward Judson, 22 years Margarita's senior, to help her get another contract. Judson took over the girl's life, creating a new young woman by subjecting her to painful electrolysis to raise her hairline, dyeing her hair red, dressing her in more glamorous and form-fitting clothes, and renaming her Rita Hayworth. He did get her a 7-year contract with Columbia, but first he married her. Then he pressed her to have sex with studio executives to further her career. She was the obsession of Harry Cohn, head of Columbia Pictures, and then the mistress of the rich and powerful Howard Hughes, neither of them known for his respect for women. She did not emerge as a star in major films until 1941 with Blood and Sand. She was 23 and becoming a little more secure about herself. Judson threatened to disfigure her if she left him, but she got up her courage and walked out on him with the help of a strongman actor Victor Mature, who was then her lover. What an awful, awful life she had. Oh my god. I never knew her history before. It's just rare. It's just really extraordinary history. A few months later, to everyone's surprise, she married Orson Welles. However, Welles, whose realistic radio adaptation of H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds had terrified a nation into believing men from Mars had landed in New Jersey, was well suited for the role of Rita Hayworth's husband mentor. He was a take-charge person and immediately assumed control of his wife's appearance, career, and education. A brilliant man. He attempted to make Rita into his vision of what she should be. A beautiful, gracious woman with brains enough to star in films of higher intellectual caliber than those she had been making. He seemed to be following the sort of scenario he had helped create for Citizen Kane. But it did not work any better in real life than it had on film. The breakup of their marriage left Rita shaken, and it was at this time that Allie entered her life. And here, guess who's coming to dinner? Here's a picture, a very, very interesting picture. Guess who's coming to dinner just after Rita and Allie's marriage in 1949? The Aga Khan posed for a portrait with his family at his villa in Cannes. Counterclockwise from upper right, Karim, Allie's son by first wife Joan, Ali, his brother Sadruddin, Amin, another son by Joan, the Aga Khan's fourth wife Yvette, and the Aga Khan and Rita. Rita, beautiful Rita. Such a beautiful woman. Okay, let's continue the article a little bit more. Let's just, so long. I'm not sure we can read it all today. It's really long. So let's. Oh, yeah. Okay. Only a few female stars, Vivian Leigh, Virginia Bruce, and Elizabeth Taylor, perhaps, could claim to be more beautiful off-scene than on-scene. Beauty on screen can be greatly enhanced by a star's photogenic qualities, skin that has a third dimension on film, eyes that glow, bone structure that draws the light. Rita photographed extremely well and had a marvelous way of moving, walking, dancing, or merely tossing her head back that made her viewer take note. But off camera, she was truly ravishing with her olive skin, large dark eyes framed by that startling mass of red hair, and a body that seemed to be pure perfection. After a little more than a week, Ali could not resist showing the world his newest conquest. He organized parties at the chateau. This was a fatal error because Rita suddenly found herself in a hostile environment. Allie's social friends were inclined to put her down. Mostly they conversed in French, which she did not speak. According to Shifra Haran, it was too overwhelming for her. Ali appeared to understand what had happened, fearing she might return to Hollywood. He arranged a motoring trip to Spain, which he believed he had managed in great secrecy. Somehow the press got wind of their elopement, and when they arrived in Madrid, they were harassed by reporters and photographers. They moved on to Seville, her father's birthplace, where her elderly grandfather, Padre Cancino, happened to be visiting his relatives, who were rather simple, poor people. Rita invited them all to a family gathering at a local restaurant, and Ali joined them and watched, fascinated as Rita danced the flamenco with her grandfather. She danced like a real Spaniard. One bystander recalled. Her white arms flashed above her head as she flicked her fingers. Her skirt had wings as she spun around, and a long, loose red hair floating above her shoulders. Ali proposed marriage to her, promising he would apply for an immediate divorce. To his shock, she refused him, and shortly after left for Hollywood to be united with her young daughter Rebecca Wells. Ali followed in. It's so exciting, this article. I have to keep reading. Rita telegraphed Orson Welles just before her wedding to Ali, asking to see him. When he arrived, there were candles, champagne, and Rita in marvelous negligee. Oh. And here they are. Trouble in Paradise. In public, Rita and Ali seemed a modern-day Romeo and Juliet, as in this shot on the balcony of their rooms in Paris in 1952. In private, however, marriage did nothing to dampen Ali's interest in other women, and during a disastrous trip to Africa to see the Aga Khan's followers, Rita fled the marriage. So here is Ali and Rita on a balcony in Paris. Their balcony in Paris, looking very beautiful and happy. Yeah. At the press. Yes. Good. Let's see here. Hot Pursuit. He took a Mediterranean-style house across the street from her movie star mansion in Brentwood and pleased her with gifts of jewelry and a small poodle puppy. Before long, they were spending almost every evening alone together, usually at Ali's, so that Rebecca would not be aware of the depth of the affair. And to avoid the press, Shifra Haran claims that it was an intensely passionate time for them both. I never saw the prince as a sex maniac, she later said. It was Miss Hayworth who was insatiable. Of course, Miss Haran could not have been a witness to their lovemaking. She is reporting her instincts and reactions in seeing them together. From the time she was a child, Rita had been used and abused sexually. Her father and Judson had trained her well in how to arouse and satisfy a man, and she knew how to win men of power. But Wells had wanted much more of her, and her failure to hold him had wounded her deeply. In a sense, Ali was helping her heal those wounds. He wanted nothing more of her than her love and passion and possession of her body. On her part, she was determined to make sure she never became bored. The London newspaper, The People, blazoned the headline, "This affair is an insult to all decent women." In the castigating article that followed, Ali was called, in a rather denigrating manner, a colored prince. The Sunday Pictorial added fuel to the fire by publishing a photograph of Rita and Ali side by side, with one of Joan and her two sons, Karim and Amin. Under the headline, "A Very Sordid Business," adding graciously, words of dialogue Rita had spoken in Gilda. "If I had been a ranch, they would have called me the Bar Nothing." The Aga Khan began to put pressure on Ali to end the affair with Rita, or stop seeing her until a divorce from Joan, whom he very much liked, was arranged. It was not that he did not understand how Ali could become enamored of such a beautiful woman. He was the last one to cast stones, but he had always dealt with the women of his life in a discreet fashion. And here's a headline. There's a picture here. There's a picture of Rita. Let's see what the picture and caption. The end of the affair. When Rita divorced Ali, she was terrified he would try to get the custody of their daughter Jasmine. Below, Rita, Jasmine left, and Rebecca, Rita's daughter, by Orson Welles. Drive near Ali's chateau on the Riviera. Ali's troubles were creating problems for the Aga Khan. Members of the sect were calling for their abdication. And now we'll continue the article. It did no good for Ali to explain to him that Rita was a famous movie star whose every move alerted the press. Finally, plans were set in motion for Rita and Ali to meet with the Aga Khan. What he did not know at the time was that his son's mistress was pregnant. Rita was dressed in a conservative caped suit, her abundant red hair brushed back smoothly from her lightly rouged face, when she arrived with Ali at the Aga Khan's villa near Nice. It is difficult to know what her decision might have been had she not been pregnant. She had nearly died during an abortion, and it is unlikely she would have chosen to repeat the experience. But these were not the days when a public figure could have a child out of wedlock without serious repercussions. And also, Ali was madly in love with her and desperate for them to marry. The Aga Khan finally gave his approval, but not until he was assured Joan would be well provided for. Joan did what had to be done with great dignity and speed, securing a divorce in Paris. There was a matter of a prenuptial agreement for Rita, perhaps to prove the depth of her emotions for Ali, or to savor her integrity in the matter. She rejected any arrangement to receive money from Ali should the marriage fail. In appreciation, he presented her with a magnificent diamond necklace valued at $150,000. Wow. The wedding was set for May 27th, 1949. As the day grew closer, Rita began to panic. She was aware of the Aga Khan's reluctant approval and had been warned by several friends that Ali would never be faithful. Orson Welles, who she was always to say was her greatest love, was in Rome at the time. She telegraphed him just before the wedding, telling him she had to see him, that it was a terrible emergency. I couldn't get any plane, he told biographer Barbara Leeming. So I went, stood up in a cargo plane to Antibes. When I arrived at her hotel, there were candles and champagne ready, and Rita in a marvelous negligee. And the door closed, and she said, "Here I am, marry me." He did not make little of this request. Rita was in a painful situation, and he was sensitive to her dilemma. Whatever she felt for Ali, Wells had a strong hold on her emotions. He managed to calm her, to explain that he couldn't remarry her because he was otherwise involved, nor would she find it a happy solution if he could. Against his better judgment, he had to advise her to go through with it. No law could stop her from divorcing Ali if it didn't work out. She was marrying the most promiscuous man in Europe. Wells said, just the worst marriage that could ever have happened. And she knew it. It was a fatal marriage. The worst thing that could have happened to her. He was charming, attractive, a nice man, but the wrong husband for her. The ceremony at the town hall became a media event, with reporters and photographers from all over crushed together to photograph and speak to the newlyweds. A Muslim ceremony would follow later. The reception at El Horizon was one of the biggest and gaudiest ever held on the Riviera. Rita seemed to have invited the world, for more than 500 guests, among them representatives from almost every major American and European newspaper. Consumed 600 bottles of champagne, 50 pounds of caviar, and mounds of other gourmet treats. Rita cut the wedding cake with a glass sword she and Ali had found in an antique shop in Paris. Wielding the awkward weapon in toreador fashion. Then, while the band struck a chord, a corps of servants marched to the swimming pool, which had been scented with 200 gallons of eau de cologne, and threw in two massive floral pieces, one shaped like an M for Margarita, the other like an A. Later, Yves Montand sang, the guests danced, and Rita sat in a chair surrounded by Ismailis, who knelt beside her, aghast recalled, and kissed her foot. And each one had something to give her. On December 28th, 1949, Rita gave birth in Switzerland to a daughter whom they named Jasmine. The Aga Khan saw his granddaughter for the first time in the spring of 1950. He came away with an uneasy feeling about Ali's current wife and speculated that their marriage was inevitably headed for collapse. It was clear to him that Rita looked upon her marriage as a haven of peace and rest. In other words, her marriage was mainly a means of relaxing and being entertained. This would never do for the wife of a future imam. The Aga Khan was not blind to Ali's shortcomings as a husband. His blatant philandering, gambling, and tendency to leave his wife alone while he pursued his own pleasures. And of course, he expected Ali's wife to be forbearing in all these foibles. A good companion, a fine hostess, and the kind of mother who would take full responsibility for the raising of her children. The Aga Khan was also keenly aware of Ali's spendthrift ways, which were making him run short of money, even with his great inherited wealth, which was protected so that he could not get immediate access to the capital. Father and son had some unpleasant conversations about Ali's extravagant spending habits. Both Ali and Rita needed to be made more aware of their position and the responsibilities attached to it. In 1950s, he ordered Ali to embark on a 3-month. Okay, the article continues on the other side. Here are some photos from the extravagant wedding, and here's Ali, I can see here, and perhaps his brothers here. So let's move on. Yeah, it's such a long article. A 3-month tour to Ismaili communities in Africa, and insisted that his wife accompany him. The trip was a ghastly experience for both of them. They quarreled violently. Rita was left to herself as Ali met his father's followers, and she had no idea how to fill her time in places like Zanzibar and Nairobi. Ali carried off his assignment as emissary for the Aga Khan with enthusiasm. The problem was that he also managed to find time for numerous liaisons with women. Late one night, Ali came back to their hotel in Nairobi from one of these assignations to find that Rita was returning to the States for 2 months. He correctly suspected that she planned to end the marriage. In fact, Rita flew from Nairobi to Nice by chartered plane, took a taxi to El Horizon, packed up the girls, and was off to Paris en route to New York within 12 hours of her arrival to France. Miss Hayworth somehow got it into her head that either Ali or I myself might try to take her daughter away from her. Indeed, kidnap the child. The Aga Khan wrote, Rita began divorce proceedings after she reached the States, where she began to negotiate a new studio contract. She also instituted legal actions to ensure that Jasmine would be given a $3 million trust fund. Her pre-marriage contract nullified any claims she personally might have made, but Rita did have a small fortune in jewels given to her by Ali. The Aga Khan was highly indignant. There is no way under Islamic law by which a child can possibly be disinherited by his or her father. As Ali Khan was struggling to extricate himself from his second marriage, he fell in love again with the film star. This time, Jean Tierney, who had made quite a sensation in the title role of the screen adaptation of Vera Caspari's Laura in 1944. They had met in Argentina, where Ali had flown on racehorse business and Jean was making way of a gaucho. Jean possessed an exotic green-eyed beauty, great style, and panache. She had a youthful war-teen affair with John F. Kennedy and had recently been divorced from designer Oleg Cassini, who was then courting Grace Kelly. Jean had a fragile side to her nature, a vulnerability that neither Joan nor Rita exhibited. She had suffered severe trauma when her daughter by Cassini was born retarded after she contracted German measles during her pregnancy. She was desperately attracted to Ali and his high spirits, charm, and exciting lifestyle. She traveled with him all over Europe and to the States for about a year. Twice she told reporters that they were engaged and would soon be married in France. But no announcement was forthcoming from Ali. Unsure of herself and on the edge of a breakdown, which Ali did not observe, Jean pressed him to seek permission from his father to marry her, a requirement in Ali's position. He went to his father and they talked for several hours to no avail. The Aga Khan was adamant that his son should not and would not marry another movie star, and that if he did, he would risk any chance of becoming imam upon the Aga Khan's death. Ali reported this to Jean and suggested that she remain his mistress, an idea that did not displease him. But she could not accept this arrangement. Tearful, hysterical scenes ensued, and when they were in Paris together, Ali, unable to cope with them any longer, walked out on her. She suffered a severe nervous breakdown and was flown back to the States. She was later admitted to a sanatorium in Hartford, Connecticut, remaining there for 18 months, and then a short time later entered another situation for 8 months. She was off the screen for 7 years, never regaining her status as an important Hollywood star. Meanwhile, Rita left Rebecca and Jasmine in the care of Miss Dorothy Chambers in White Plains, New York, while she and actor-singer Dick Haymes stayed at a luxurious Manhattan hotel. It was never disclosed who tipped him off, but a reporter gained entry to Miss Chambers' house by claiming to want to rent it Photographs of Jasmine were worth a good price to magazines, and he had come, he later claimed, simply wanting a photograph of the child. What he found shocked him, and he returned the next day with a photographer who took a number of pictures while the reporter diverted Miss Chambers. The house and yard were a filthy shambles. Jasmine was playing in a trash-littered yard. Rebecca Wells was sitting on a back porch, heaping with trash. Unwashed dishes, pots, and pans overflowed the kitchen, sink and counters. Paint was peeling from the walls. These photographs appeared in Confidential magazine and then found their way in to other periodicals. Articles and editorials sharply criticizing both parents were printed in the States and abroad. The children were placed under protective custody of the Children's Court. Neglect charges were considered. Allie's troubles were creating great problems for the Aga Khan. There had been a subversive campaign among members of the sect calling for his and Allie's abdiction from their spiritual leadership. While the Aga Khan was visiting Africa in 1953, things reached such a pitch that a special council was called to meet in his hotel suite to discuss what should be done. The end result was a decision that all members of the East African communities be requested to sign a declaration of loyalty to the Aga Khan or be excommunicated if they refused. By 1956, the old Aga Khan's heart was failing and cancer was spreading throughout his body. It was only a matter of time. In the early morning of July 11th, the family began their vigil by the dying man's bedside. The Aga Khan was unconscious. At 12:45 he died. In his last days he had made no mention or sign of who was to succeed him. It would be the natural course of things, and following historical precedent, be his elder son Ali. Despite his many disagreements with his father, Ali seemed at that moment confident that this was the case. He immediately took charge of the situation. The answer to the succession would be in the will, which would be read by the Aga Khan's lawyer the next morning. The crowd, religious followers, and members of the press that was gathered on the ground of the Aga Khan's villa in Versoix on Lac Léman across Geneva had been informed of Aga Khan III's death and the fact that he had not named his successor on his deathbed. Ali said his last goodbye to his father and then led the rest of the family down the villa's curving staircase and out into the terrace. It was more than 90 degrees in the sun, and Ali, his face drawn, showed signs of grief and exhaustion. His open-necked shirt revealed beads of sweat, and he made the announcement. Ismailis dropped to their knees. Ali greeted reporters and told them there would be a press conference soon and the new Aga Khan would address them. Then he disappeared back inside. Early the next morning, Major Adwan, the Aga Khan's personal lawyer, and Dr. Otto Giesen, one of the lawyers who had drawn up the will, arrived. Ali hurried with the rest of the family to the luxurious sitting room with its oriental decor. Even Jasmine was brought in to hear the reading of the will. The curtains were drawn so that those inside could not be seen by the 100 or so Ismailis standing in the garden near the windows, waiting to pay homage to their new imam as soon as the announcement was made. Giesen, in a clear, unemotional voice with a slight but noticeable German accent, began to read. Ever since the time of my ancestor Ali, the first imam, that is to say, over a period of some 1300 years, he intoned, "It has always been the tradition of our family that each imam chooses his successor at his absolute and unfettered discretion from amongst any of his descendants, whether they be sons or remoter male issue." Ali paled. These words left no doubt in his or anyone else's mind in that room that Ali Khan was to be passed over. In view of the fundamentally altered conditions in the world in recent years, I am convinced that it is the best interest of the Shia Muslim Ismailian community that I should be succeeded by a young man who has been brought up and developed during recent years and in the midst of the new age. For these reasons, I appoint my grandson Karim, the son of my son, to succeed to the title. Ali's elder son by Joan, Karim, had proved himself to be a responsible young man and had attended Harvard, where he had exhibited little of his father's wild streak. However much Ali might have suspected his father could have passed him by, he was unprepared when the Aga Khan's final words were read. His then girlfriend, the fashion model Simone Boudin, who called herself Bettina, recalled that his father's preference for Karim was a kind of public humiliation. He was never quite the same from that day on. But Ali pulled himself together and crossed the room to Karim. "The Imam is dead. Long live the Imam," he said, and kissed his son's hand before backing humbly away. That was a really, really interesting and great article. It would make a great movie. I think it would. So we better wrap this video up. It's getting quite long. There's another article now, Saatchi and Saatchi. A family business, Louis Dreyfus. Yeah. Okay, so I'll just flip through these last pages. There are not really any more. There's the horoscopes and some ads and subscription, yeah, and something here. Ad for the Spectator magazine, and a beautiful ad for the iconic perfume Obsession by Calvin Klein. And here's a young, beautiful Kate Moss on the backside here. Looks so young and innocent here. Yeah. So, thank you so much for joining me in this cozy and very interesting magazine. reading and flip through. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you really have a wonderful rest of the day and a wonderful sleep. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again in my next video very,